Welcome to Faith, Family, and Fitness in your 50s. I'm your host with my co host, Lee Brown, and we're on week 4 of, episode 4. And we were thinking that maybe iron sharpens iron would be a good topic for this week because of all the conflict that has been going on in the world and probably in families and in couples throughout this past week. So let's get into it. Let's have a conflict. No.
Boom goes the dynamite.
We actually had a conflict that I didn't know was a conflict. I'm super direct, black and white, touch of autism, ADD, ADHD, OCD, you name it, I probably got it. And so when I say things, I'm kind of to the point. And so Lee and I were having a discussion about something, and it was about the neighbor borrowing something. And I made a comment to Lee, and he initially took it the wrong way, but did something different with it. So do you want to explain what happened in our conflict, non-conflict?
Well, it's just an area of my life where I'm truly trying to surrender to the Lord, and as opposed to being aggravated or jump to conclusions, I stop and pause, and I'll have a conversation with the Lord. And that's what my wife alluded to when I was having this conversation with her. Is like, hey, do you realize you did a wonderful thing? You stopped and had a conversation with the Lord. And that's where, I realized my missteps, because I could get upset with the comment that you made. But when I stop and I do a self eval, and I actually am reminded how I presented it to you, I realized how I opened up the door for you to think what you thought and say what you said. So again, at the end of the day, the accountability is on me. And if we want to go deeper into that scenario, when someone says, "Oh, you offended me," well, if you do a self eval, you realize half the time that you are part of the problem. First, by allowing somebody to offend you, you are giving them authority over you, in my opinion. And again, that's just my opinion. So I'm trying to be different and react differently than I have in the past, where it's like, okay, I may not start an argument, but I'll go silent, or I'll be quiet more. So now I'm trying to engage with the Lord, gather my thoughts, and then sit down and talk to you at a different time when the blood flow isn't so high.
Good advice, taking time to think about it, right, and to do a self-eval. And that's a super hard thing to do because we're not trained to look at our part. We like to, as human beings, we like to name and blame. That is more comfortable, that's more convenient, and that takes the heat off of us.
Right.
Earlier in our marriage, as we were growing and in the Lord was constantly working on me to, what is your part in it? Lee is not intentionally trying to hurt your feelings by doing these things. Lee is not purposely trying to annoy you, or Lee is doing these things as a cry for attention. So where are you not meeting the need? And so I would have to look at myself and say, you know what? I've been asking for too much, or I've been assuming something, and I've been incorrect in my assumptions. And that has caused conflict for us.
Right.
This conflict that I didn't know was a conflict, it was an inner conflict for Lee this morning. It had to do with the neighbor borrowing some garden tools, and just a comment that he made, and Lee only gave me part of the story. And so I guess that, not having all the information, we might give a response that can be taken the wrong way.
Right. And let's, for the record, let's be clear. My wife was not upset that I allowed them to use some tools.
Correct.
it,
No, that wasn't what the.
yeah, and it was more had to do with they offered to do something for us, and what I didn't communicate with Susan effectively was what I said to her in the comforts of our home was it sounded a little bit more explosive, like, I don't need you to, you know, do a chore for me. But again, I had to evaluate how I initially said it to her, but it was something more of the lines that, hey, we're not those type of neighbors. If you ever need anything, please feel free to ask, and please don't feel like you have to do something in return. We want to help you. We want to do anything that we can to be a good neighbor to you. And it's not, you know, scratch my back, then I'll scratch your back. It's not that type of, friendship. We want to be able to help you if you need something and ask for nothing in return. But again, that's not how I presented it to Susan initially.
And so when I gave him the response, well, honey, it's okay to accept help, was my response to him. And so that triggered something in him that I didn't know was triggering this conflict. And so I was able to tell him, um, I want people to see him. When he gave that response, I don't need your help, or however he posed it, not that harshly. I was letting him know I wanted people to see him as I see him, the truly, the generously, the kindly, the wittily. And so when I hear him give responses that are quick or short or sarcastic, that is not the true Lee that I know. That's not the Lee in the best light that I want him to be seen. And so that's why I was giving him the comment, well, honey, you can accept, it's okay to accept help.
Right. And I think that pause that we had was, allowed us to, come again together and discuss it and talk about it and gain a little bit more understanding of each other. And that's the beauty about our marriage. And I don't understand marriages, and I'm not trying to be negative at all, but when people's like, oh, I've been with the same person for 15, 20 years, I just need something new and fresh. Man, my marriage is new and fresh all the time because I'm always learning. I'm always putting myself in a position to grow with my wife. And um, I just love that we learn new stuff about each other, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I just love the path that we're on, that we get to experience and explore. And when you say iron sharpens irons, I love the fact that you and I are different. I didn't always appreciate that. And I think early on in our marriage, it was more of we're so different, we're so different. But now I look at it 27 years later as actually a blessing and something that grows me. I learn from you because of our differences. And I'll give this example in church today. We're talking to a couple of our friends that sit in front of us. And, a situation has happened with one of them regarding their job. And, my brain immediately goes into, and again, my natural thing, my job. Is a director. My title is a director, so I'm constantly directing things, and I'm trying to find the positive. So I throw out this positive response, but my wife and I think differently, and she pretty much rescued me. And again, say rescue, but it's a strong word. But it's like she followed up with saying, but I bet you it does hurt. I can just, oh, I feel for you. I know how horrible that feels right now. And it's just something that, whoa, wow, you're right. Something just happened. And I kind of went, well, it's going to be good. It's going to be okay. You did it. And it's like, well, take time and think about, even if it's going to be okay, let's not forget that that is something hard for an individual to go through. right now. So because of our differences, because we think different, I that's a compliment because I totally missed that, and I was like, phew, kind of like, wow, that was a huge save. Thank you, honey. Because again, we don't want to be those friends that just, oh, it's gonna be fine. God's got you. You know, just pray about it and call me in the morning.
Hmm. Yes, and I think you said the word compliment, and that's what we are to do as husband and wife. We are to complement each other. We're not in competition with each other.
Right.
And I think when earlier on in our marriage, and even sometimes now, we can be in competition with each other, that's when we have the most conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't anything wrong with conflict because those sparks are what cause growth. You grow in uncomfortable places.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it draws you back to the Lord, back to His Word. And I know that that's what brought us to this place where we are now, where we can do the self evaluations and go to God's Word and have the hard conversations with God before He gently turns us back to each other and say, "Hey, I
Right.
handled that wrong. This is what I was really trying to say, or this was really my intent behind it." And it helps not only in our marriage, but also in how we deal with our coworkers or our family members or our
Mm-hmm.
friends. So
Right.
it's a constant self-evaluation before you're talking to somebody.
Absolutely. And what I love too is I think what we do now that we didn't do earlier on in our marriage is we give each other room for growth. And what I mean by growth is room to make mistakes. I can, just think about early on in our marriage that, man, there was no room for mistakes or growth to allow. You're either going to do it right or we're just going to be at odds with one another. So now I can make a mistake or do something and I feel totally comfortable with sitting down with you like, hey, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts? Because I know you are going to respond with love, even if it's something that kind of ticks you off. You'll walk through that with me, because I can go back early in our marriage where, man, I would not communicate anything to you until the poop hits the fan, and I'm like, well, she's gonna find out. She's gonna get a letter that says we owe a bill that's $500 or whatever, and where did this come from? Or now, let's say the last 10, 15 years where it's been pretty much open and honest about things right away, where we work through those processes together. And I think early in marriage, I thought as the man of the house, I had to take on those responsibilities, and I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it until I couldn't. And then I asked to be rescued. Honey.
But I like how you said that, because it calls me back to the heat. You were afraid to tell me things, and the reason you were afraid is because I was harsh, and I wasn't pleasant to talk to if you were giving me bad news or if you were giving me hard news. And so that's where the Lord came to me, and He was like, so, what is your part in this that he doesn't want to talk to his own wife, or he's afraid of his own wife? You want your husband to talk to you. So, what do you need to change? What are some things that you can do? Don't blame it on him, but what is it that you can do? And so, it was a lot of hard conversations with the Lord, a lot of tears, a lot of years of hard work, a lot of failures. And it's not perfect now. I'm still the same person, just have maybe a little bit of softer edges as he works these lessons in me. You're not going to change overnight, and you're actually not going to be a totally different person.
Right.
You're still you, but you're a version of you that is more like Christ.
Right.
Because he's given me these qualities for a reason. He's giving you your qualities for a reason, and he's sharpening them,
Right.
and so they can be used.
Right. And I think for the both of us back then, it was me, not we, was most important. And I think now it's we, not me, are the most important. So we are one. We are covered by the blood of the Lord. We are, a team. So I think that's changed in our marriage, in our communication, because we don't think individually. We think unity. We're a unit. So I think it is great now that we can talk about so many different things um, with ease. And again, we don't want to put it out there that our marriage is perfect. We don't have struggles. We don't have things that we struggle with. That's not the case. We just struggle with things together now as opposed to separate and apart. Well, I'll just deal with my issue, and when I fix it, then I'll come. Then we'd never be together. We'd always be apart.
Mm-hmm.
um,
I think it not only goes, like I said, for our marriage. I think of the different ways that we've had conflict this week, and both of them had to do in our workplaces. And we had a discussion. uh, I'm open. I'm way more open now that I'm older to hear different people's perspectives that are different from mine, because I want to know how to communicate and how to best relate to people, because
mhm,
we are meant to be around people. And I'm around a lot of people that have different opinions than I do. And I like that. I'm around people who have different beliefs than I do. And I like that because it challenges me to know, why do I believe what I believe? Who
mhm,
do I believe in?
right.
And so it brings me back to God. And so I wanted you to briefly share, how do you handle your conflicts? Because even in Christian organizations, even in
Hmm.
dealing with church friends, there's conflict, because wherever there's people, there's sin
Right.
and there's conflict.
Um, how I have handled conflict lately, I try to ask good questions, and I try to encourage the other person that I'm maybe in conflict with, and I try to model it myself. Don't make assumptions or accusations, but ask good questions. Because I started to process a lot of issues that I may have at work. And I found myself, spinning my wheels 20 minutes, 30 minutes, unraveling all of the assumptions that had been made or accusation that it had been made so I could clear the table. Then we actually start to speak on truth. So whoever I'm dealing with, I encourage them to ask questions. Ask me the question. So, for example, if I come in and say, well, hey, Susan, I heard that, doing 2 hours of work yesterday, you're on your computer and you're texting and Facebook, and that's just not allowed at work. Well, if you can see clearly, I never asked that person a question. I took secondhand information and I came and just accused them based off an assumption or whatever. But if I came in and said, hey, can you give me just kind of a bullet point? What do you do your first 2 hours of work, or just walk me through your day, just wanting to understand what your day looks like. So it's not making an accusation or assumption, it's asking a question. And, now that person, whether they tell me the truth or not, I think we're still healthy because I asked a question. So I think that's where I want to make a change in my role and my job, and just giving people the freedoms and the opportunities to speak on and have healthy communication. And I think we waste so much time, and I think I share it with you too. I just give me the meat and potatoes. I don't want the backstory.
Hmm.
I don't want an excuse. Well, I had to do that because no, let's stay on topic. And I think right now, if man, any type of conflict that comes up is disturbing how a person just refuses to answer if you ask them a direct question. It's all these bunny trails. So I just want to do less of that because God is truth. Um,
And I think that when you look back at the beginning of time with Adam and Eve,
Right.
God asked them, like you said, asking questions. He said, "Where are you?" And he knew where they are, but he gave them a chance to come back. And he asked them the question. When you look at Jesus's conversation, he wasn't confrontational. He asked questions as well. So I think that's a great strategy when we're talking about conflict. I also think believing the best about people.
For sure.
And especially in the situations that you're in, always referring to the Bible. When I think you and I talked about whenever we have conflict and it's about business, that's why we have the conflict, because we put business before God. But if we continue to have God's business be our business, then we might have less conflict in our jobs. Just keep it about the main thing. Right. Take the personal opinions, take my comfort zones of, the people that I work with or don't work with, what my beliefs, my perspectives about them, take that out of it and put it, make it about what it is, the issue.
Absolutely.
Let's discuss the issue.
Right. And I think, like you said, when you think the best of someone and you also go into that situation saying, I'm going to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem, I think it makes it easier, because we cannot control the other person that we're dealing with, but we can 100% control our thoughts, our actions, how we respond to things. And just looking at the Bible study today, I was just kind of blown away. It was talking about a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And how many times have we been in that, where we know the right thing to do, but we want to poke the bear. And yeah, what happens when you poke the bear? So again, we're not perfect, but it's okay to practice things in excellence. So I'm going to practice being a peacemaker. I'm going to practice being a part of the solution. And when you make that your daily habit, it's very difficult to find yourself in conflict, because you have that mindset and you're turning it over to God. Lord, I want to be a peacemaker. Father, I want to, because those things you pray on, God will answer prayer. So if you focus your mind on practicing that, and I love it when it has to do with workout or it has to do with running. I love it when you encourage me, said, honey, like when I ran my mile, I'm like, honey, I did it in 13 minutes. Tomorrow I'm going to shoot for this goal, and then I'm going to shoot for goal. And even when there's only a 5-second difference, but it's down, you're like, honey, you're practicing it. You're making it a habit. It's going to keep dropping. You keep making it a habit. And I think that applies to every aspect of our life. Make it a habit to represent and honor the Lord well. And you're going to love the results you get by practicing that. I'm going to yield and give everything to the Lord, and I'm going to do my best. And yeah, you're going to fail sometimes, but again, that habit is just keep pushing forward.
So I guess if we were going to leave the podcast with some thoughts, we would ask you to embrace conflict. Jesus embraced conflict. We are not above facing conflict. Jesus was not above facing conflict. Conflict can sharpen you. It should drive you to God's word. And any other things that you have for?
No, I'm gonna piggyback on what you just said. Set those goals and expect God to bless you and reward you. Stay faithful.
All right, until next week, keep God first.
Love your family and stay active.